The Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology has responded to the demands by the South African Union of Students regarding the 2020 registration. He says public funds for the university system are constrained, that there is no possibility that debts of students who didn't qualify for NSFAS funding can be eradicated by government. For more on this, we are joined by the Higher Education Minister, Dr. Blade Nzimande, from our Pretoria studios. Minister, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Good evening, Tsepiso, and a happy new year to you and all at the SABC. Thanks for inviting me this evening.
Thank you very much, Minister. So the SAUS says they've resorted to this action of calling for a shutdown following numerous attempts at engaging and trying to bring sobriety, as they call it, to the situation. To your mind, do you think that talks have broken down?
Let me just make it absolutely clear, Tsepiso, that I invited, the leadership of the SRCs to a meeting on Tuesday last week. I had written the letter the week before. And whilst preparing for the meeting last week, these demands are read out in the media and then be given 7 working days. I had not had any discussions with the students, so there was no deadlock, as it were, to speak about. Instead, I had invited the students. We had about close on to 4 hours of discussion last week to brief them about our state of readiness for the 2020 academic year. And we discussed all the 15 issues that they actually raised. And most of those issues that we discussed, we were all sharing about what is it that we are going to do, and most of the things that they were asking for are things that we are doing as government. That is why my own view is that, frankly, there is absolutely no need this time around to disrupt the registration process for the beginning of the academic year. For instance, one of the main demands is that students must be allowed to register even if they've got debt. Yes, of course. All NSFAS qualifying students are permitted to actually register. We have had discussions with the institutions without having to pay any debt they owe. In addition, they are not going to pay any registration fee or upfront amount for purposes of them registering. Those are NSFAS qualifying students. And this current academic year, Tsepiso, to give you an idea, we're going to be having just over 700,000 students at our TVET colleges and universities, with 35 billion rands that government is giving out for NSFAS students. So that was one of the issues that the students were actually raising, and we did discuss that. And a number of the other issues that they were raising, some of them regarding, for instance, the quality of accommodation, accreditation of accommodation, that is going to be done at institutional level. With regard to the raising of fees, I have already promulgated that tuition fees are not going to be raised at more than 5.4% by universities, and for residencies, because they are slightly more expensive, by not more than 7.4%. And that has actually generally been accepted by all the institutions. There were 1 or 2 issues where we did not agree. And I want to be frank with the one issue where we did not agree. But I still said we can engage and try and convince each other that we are not going to change the fact that we only allow students to fail once during their undergraduate studies. And the students are demanding that they must be allowed to fail twice. We said, look, we have changed the bursary now of government from 2018. It's no longer a loan. It's an outright bursary that does not have to be paid back. We have invested a lot of money, so we can't really be saying a 3-year degree can be done almost in twice the time.
Okay, Minister,
when there are many other students who can make use of that.
Hold the thought on that issue of allowing students to fail twice, and I do want us to talk about it at the later stage. But you say that those who qualify for NSFAS clearly don't have to pay any upfront fees, and the issue of historical debt has already been resolved. And We had the NSFAS administrator in the studio about a week ago. This issue did come up from our viewers who are saying they encounter that problem. Some universities or TVET colleges, they are being forced to pay an upfront fee. Some who say they are in NSFAS qualifying and in fact have qualified for NSFAS, even with their letter, they are being have had their results withheld from them, and they're also not being allowed to register. So while I appreciate that there are measures in place, it seems that people are encountering this problem. Is your department aware of it, and what are you doing about it?
We have made it very clear to all, because we met the students and a number of other stakeholders last week, that where there are specific problems, they must raise them. Both as the department and as NSFAS and as individual managements in various institutions, we are happy to deal with specific problems. What we do not entertain are just generalized complaints. Where issues have been pointed out, I have said, come to me, come to my department, go to the NSFAS administrator and actually tell us where these problems are. I'm still repeating. Where there is any NSFAS student who is being required to pay upfront, let me get those details. Even if they give them to you, Tsepiso, now, you pass them on to me. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I will contact that institution and check what they are doing, because that is not the agreement.
Okay.
That's why we are saying also, we must talk, we must engage, because not a single problem that we are not willing to deal with. And as government, we are proud. I need to say this, Tsepiso. We have really released billions and billions of rands to help students from poor and working class backgrounds. That's why we are calling on everybody. Let's work together to ensure a smooth start to the academic year.
Where do you think the problem lies, Minister? Where are you failing to find each other? SAUS is accusing you of failing to take poor students from working class families seriously by, as they say, not bringing practical and meaningful solutions to destitute students. Is it the delivery of the message? I mean, you have said that, government can no longer handle dispersing more funds to the university system, as in it's just impossible. But you're being seen as unsympathetic here and disregarding the demands of poor working students. Why do you think that there is such a discord between the two of you?
Tsepiso, I'm just telling you facts, and I want to repeat what I've said differently to you, and commitment to the country tonight. Not a single NSFAS qualifying student in any university or TVET college in this country who has been admitted and been given a place will not be paid for. That's it. That is the commitment we are making. Anybody else who is saying something else than that is not speaking the truth.
Okay. What about free...
Tsepiso,
I was going to ask...
I thought that very quickly.
Go ahead.
I needed to say that over and above tuition fees, we are paying for accommodation and we are paying for meals. Where students have to find private accommodation, they must work with individual institutions to ensure that accommodation is accredited, and they are given between 1,500 Rand to 2,250 Rands per month for 10 months for the whole year, so that they are actually able to get food and be able to get accommodation. So those are the things that we are doing.
Let's talk about some of the other demands, especially when you speak about accreditation. They're demanding that you correct the accreditation process for private accommodation. They're also calling for free registration of vulnerable, poor and missing middle students, and also calling for the reopening of NSFAS applications for new students and walk-ins. What has been the department's response to this, and is it possible?
On the last issue that you actually mentioned, we have made it clear also to the students. Any student who did not apply for NSFAS Tsepiso and happens to be admitted now in the new year to a university or a TVET college, all that student will have to do is to sign acknowledgement of debt. The details get sent to NSFAS. If the student qualifies for NSFAS, NSFAS will pay and that debt will be immediately erased. In other words, NSFAS is open for those students who might not have applied, but they've actually been admitted now. So as far as that is concerned, there is no issue. The issue of accreditation of accommodation is not something that we are doing at national level. As a department, we have agreed with each individual institution to work with the students and the SRCs to deal with the issue of the accreditation of accommodation. Of course, we do acknowledge that we do not as yet have enough accommodation in our institutions. That's why we are using private providers, but we have committed to billions of rands over the next 10 years to build more than 300,000 beds in our system in order to provide for this, because the challenge we have had, we have made huge achievements in growing admissions into our institutions to deal with the apartheid past in the main, but the infrastructure unfortunately did not catch up in the manner that it was supposed to catch up. The other issue, Tsepiso, that I must mention that we discussed is about UNISA students. I have said to the students, we do appreciate that there are UNISA students who are actually registered, who are poor, and UNISA is assisting some of those students. But on the question of general support for all UNISA students, we have to sit down and discuss that, because the overwhelming majority of students at UNISA are actually distance students, because UNISA is a distance institution. But we have said to the student leadership, let's sit down and discuss this matter, because we do understand that there are poor students who are at UNISA who might not have been admitted at contact universities, but what should we deal with? Already NSFAS is providing some assistance to some of the students, but we can't just change policy overnight about the character of UNISA. Let's rather sit down and discuss. So there is nothing that is closed. There is nothing that I have rejected from the students to say that we can't engage. Most of the things they are asking for, they are already happening. On the missing middle, Tsepiso, the students know, in fact, the leadership of the SRCs themselves, when this new bursary scheme was announced, that it will cover students only from families who are earning only up to 350,000 rands per annum, they welcomed it and said this is a huge advance and it's no longer going to be a loan. The issue then of students who fall behind that, they're outside that, there are different categories. Those, for instance, who are earning between 350,000 rand and 600,000, but have got more than one student, say, at university. We are already exploring that with NSFAS, because that requires attention. The others, we definitely have to look at possibilities of an affordable loan scheme involving the private sector, because government policy is we can afford and we are prioritizing the most vulnerable children of the working class and the poor, which not a single one will not be paid for if admitted at a post-school institution this academic year. Okay. In addition, also, Tsepiso, we have done something great this year. NSFAS has managed to tell all the students who applied last year whether they qualify or not. So they go to an institution knowing already that they have got NSFAS in their pocket.
Minister, we are
calling everybody.
But I need to ask you this question. Your department has acknowledged the shortage of funding, especially for postgraduate studies. What are you doing to improve the situation? Because that's also some of the demands that have been forwarded by students.
The piece of government policy is simple. Given the poverty in our country, our big priority, number one, is to assist poor students to get a first, say, degree or diploma, so that they can be able to choose to go and work, to be able to support themselves, support their families. That is government policy that we have in place. We do have bursaries for postgraduate students, but bursaries for postgraduate students have got their own procedures. For instance, most institutions will not accept you into an honors program unless you have got 60% or 65%. Minister, but as from next year, we are actually going to be designing a postgraduate support program that will take into account the need to support poorer students better than we have been doing
All
thus
right,
far.
Minister, in a word, yes or no, are you calling students back to the negotiating table? Do you think you'll be able to avoid a protracted shutdown?
I am calling upon all students, with the assistance of the parents and everybody and communities, to go back to register, and so that whatever other issues that needs to be discussed are not issues that actually require that we can disrupt registration and possibly even endanger the places that some of the students have secured if they are unable to register on time.
Minister,
so we are saying go back, and I'm here to discuss with you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology, Dr. Blade Nzimande. By the way, you heard that invitation. If you have any of these problems of not being able to secure a place at university because of historical debt, including being asked for upfront payment, please forward those details to us on our Twitter handle, #FullView, so that we can forward it to his office.